This is a little bit of a tongue-in-cheek slide that we like to start a lot of our presentations off. And the point being that this isn't something that people do for fun and good times. It's one of those things you do because it's compulsory and you have to do it. And at the end of the day, if you do it right and you do it efficiently, it shouldn't be that big of a deal because you're merely collecting tax and passing it on. But right now, it can be very difficult, very timely, very costly for companies to do. So a couple of things you have to recognize is states right now, sales tax is a big source of revenue. Their other sources of revenue are really shrinking, right? Property taxes are down because of property values being down. Income taxes are down because of unemployment. And so sales tax is a place where everybody looks and says, hey, we got to get revenue here. So with the states being in budget deficits, they have to do something. So they're doing a few different things. Number one, they're increasing audits. And number two, they're really pushing for this concept of remote nexus. And again, real quick, what that is a lot of people are looking at the internet situation and the e-commerce situation, and they're saying, they call it the Amazon law. Well, it's a little more than that, but essentially the short version is if you sell something, whether it's over the internet or wherever, the home body of the buyer is going to want to get tax out of that. And right now it's very difficult for them to collect the tax from the buyer, so they're pushing that onus to the seller, and it's getting a lot of traction in both the business world and the political world. So there's risk here, right? So you may say, hey, I've been doing sales tax for a while. I feel pretty good about it. I haven't had a negative audit. Well, that's great, but the fact is you're going to get audited. States are dramatically increasing their audit activity, and they typically find something when they do an audit. And we'll talk a little more specifically about some of the numbers around what that could mean to you. So if you do get audited, the average penalty is $34,000, right? So I don't know of any company, especially in today's environment, that has extra cash laying around. And the problem with that is two things. One, if the average is 34, guess what? That means there's lots of people who paid more than that. So to have an expense that's, let's call it $30,000, $40,000 that you didn't plan for, that comes right out of your cash, right out of your bottom line. And most of the folks that I deal with that are in the accounting group of a company, maybe you're a controller or a CFO or you're the accounting manager, it's kind of a thankless job. When you do it right, no one's really going to acknowledge it or give you a special award at the company banquet. But if you do it wrong and you have to go into somebody and say, we need to pay $50,000 to the state of Colorado, boy, you're going to get their attention then. So we want to make sure that doesn't happen. So what's happening right now with the states is, just to give you a few examples. So in the past year, Idaho hired 48, California hired 100, mostly just because of their recent change to collecting online sales tax. And then where I live in Ohio, they hired 100 in 2011. So it's really, really dramatically ramping up. I want to talk a second when we talk about redefining nexus. Just in case anyone's unfamiliar with the term, it's essentially referring to business presence. And in the past, the state said if you had physical or tangible business presence in their area, then that gave them the right to ask you to collect sales tax. Well, now they're defining that in very different ways. Maybe I sell things over the internet. Maybe I have a third party that does the sales for me, like a manufacturer's rep. Maybe I have fellas on my company that ship things on our trucks and they install it. Maybe I have folks who come and do training. Maybe I have folks who do repairs. But any of those things can trigger nexus, and it depends on the state. So that's the other tricky thing. You might have it figured out for the state you're in today, but as your business grows and you expand into new states, you have to start all over again because there's no consistency with the laws. Again, one of the things that was interesting in the past was our economy historically has been about 60% goods, like stuff you make, right? And then about 40% services. Well, that's basically flip-flopped in the last several years, maybe a couple of decades even. And so states are looking at it saying, we probably need to be taxing services since our economy is predominantly services. So you're looking at things like cloud computing services like Avalara, which right now isn't taxed in most places. It's probably going to be. If you're a software company or a company that deals with high-tech computer-type products, in the past you would charge for the tangible product, but typically not for services. That's changing in many states. Other examples are Rhode Island last year added about 30-some items to the taxable status. And I think there were some examples where things like over-the-counter medicine, like maybe aspirin or an allergy medicine or something like that. So you really have to be careful about this. And then the big thing is there's a couple of bills right now before Congress which talk about remote nexus and taxing internet sales. So one of the things that's going to make that likely is, first of all, the states flat out need the money. Second of all, it's more politically feasible than any other kind of tax because technically it's on the books already now. Everybody has a rule where if I buy a book on Amazon, I'm supposed to report that to my state and file the tax when I do my tax return. It's very difficult for states to enforce that, so they want to switch it and put the onus on the seller. Now, in the past, some of the sellers have said, well, I'm a small business too, and you can't ask me to keep track of the tax rates for every state in the thousands of jurisdictions. And that was a reasonable argument up until a point, but with services like Avalara that allow folks to automate it, it can be extremely affordable for folks to have accurate real-time sales tax calculations. One of the things we do when we start talking to people is way before we ever even mention product is we start to ask you about your business. And so these are an exercise that you can all do to a degree on your own and then we can help you with. But what you want to do is start thinking about what business are you in? What is it that you make or sell? Who do you sell it to? Where do you sell it? Do you sell it direct to the end user? Do you sell it through a reseller or a retailer or a channel? All those things will impact the state's definition of nexus. If they say that you have nexus, then the requirement is that you should register in that state and you should collect and remit sales tax. And then the challenge about that is once you're in for the state, you're in for everything. And so typically there's multiple levels of tax jurisdiction. So there's state, there's county, there's city. There could be special tax jurisdictions, maybe like for a football stadium or something like that. So the easy part is if you have employees in a state or if you have a physical presence like a building. But it doesn't take much. So Avalara is in Washington and I'm in Ohio. That creates nexus for Avalara in Ohio just by virtue of having me working out of my home office. Again, I deal with some medical device companies and they have, I forget the acronym, but in that industry it's common to have a third party represent your product, and maybe they already have relationships with doctors and hospitals, so they would go and represent your product and the products of a couple other companies. Well, they thought, hey, we're good. Those people aren't even employees, but that's not true. They're a regular agent of your business that your business couldn't exist in that area without them, so states will require you to file. We've had other companies that have equipment that they might lease or even give away, and that equipment then is the model for them to sell a reusable or a consumable product. So one people had machines in nursing homes, and then there was components that were reusable, and I forget if it was for blood tests or whatever, but that created nexus because they owned the equipment. Even though their business model was to make money on the consumables, the fact that they owned the equipment and that equipment was in a particular state, that creates tangible personal property, which is another reason why if your company ships products on your trucks, it's your property until the end user takes possession. So that can create nexus. So again, a lot of different things. I don't want to go through every single one, but the point we're making is you may have nexus in a state and you don't realize it, and there's two different scenarios if that's the case. One is you proactively go to the state and do what's called a voluntary disclosure agreement, in which case it's usually more gentle and you may be required to pay back taxes, but they typically won't kill you on it, and we can negotiate for you on the look-back period. But if the state should come to you and start asking questions and find out that you've been doing business there for 10 years and you've never been filing, that will be a totally different kind of conversation, because not only can they collect back taxes, but they can levy penalties, interest, fines, and it can get extraordinarily expensive. And one of the things I think folks often don't realize is those fines and penalties can be disproportionate to the actual amount of tax in question. I'll give you a quick example. We have a company that we deal with. I think I can say their name because we have a published case study called Northern Tool. And Northern Tool had an exemption certificate issue where they got audited and they couldn't supply the documentation. And I think the amount of tax due on the sale would have been less than $700. So you would think, okay, I screwed up, I'll write a check and I'll pay the tax. You know, it's not too good, but it's not too bad. Well, in this case, their fine was over $20,000, and that's for a single infraction. So again, we want to make sure that those kind of things don't happen to you, because they are happening to companies out there every day. So there's a lot of things to consider. So first of all, if you know where you have nexus, that's great, but then there's a lot of rules you have to figure within those states to make sure that you're compliant. So a lot of times, the first thing is which jurisdictions have the right to tax that buyer. So you have to look at it and say, well, what state are we in? Are we in an origin state, a destination state, or a mixed state? And then depending on which you are, that tells you where to calculate the state from. So a destination base, for example, is based on where the product ends up, where it's shipped to, and origin means it comes from where it's shipped from. Okay, so let's say you know what jurisdictions are involved and you know the rates. You still have to know, is the product itself taxable? And it varies by state, by jurisdiction. Sometimes it varies by the customer, and sometimes it varies by the usage scenario. So that's 3 different variables, which could be for one product, and you might have 20 on a line on an invoice. So, I mean, you can see how the complexity just expands exponentially. So if you're selling in any of these industries, you probably have issues. A couple quick examples. Medical devices, there could be something that maybe I go in for surgery and they put a cast on me and then they take it off before I leave the hospital. That would be treated one way versus if they put a metal pin or metal rod in my arm and then when I go home it literally leaves the premises with me. That might be treated another way. So there's lots of nuances. Food and beverage may be one of the most crazy. We would always joke that Milky Way dark chocolate, because it has flour, is considered food, and so it's not taxable, but the Milky Way traditional one is considered candy, so it is taxable. So there's all kind of nutty rules like that, and if you deal with apparel, especially in New York, you've probably heard, and I'm sure those of you on the phone can tell some of your own stories, but it's almost comical how crazy some of these rules are, and again, it's because it's political. So let's say you know that the client is taxable, and let's say you have a good address. How do you figure out what the rates are? Well, a lot of people say, well, you know what, I can just go by the zip code, and I could use a rate. Well, not so fast. There's some problems with zip codes. I want to do a quick illustration of that. So this is an area in and around Denver, Colorado. You can see there's a few different counties in the area. And as we look through it and drill down further, there's a variety of zip codes. So we're going to focus on this one by Greenwood Village, 80111. So you think that's not too big of a deal. If my client's in that zip code, I just charge that tax. Well, actually, within that one zip code, in this one area, you can see there's 6 or 7 different tax rates. What this means is that there's a strong likelihood that you could get it wrong. If you overcharge your customer, then you may have to do a credit and rebill, which is time-consuming and certainly not, world-class customer service. The other scenario is you undercollect, and then you have to just make it up out of your bottom line cash to pay the government. Now, part of the reason it's so difficult is just in this one zip code, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 different scenarios, and look at all the different tax jurisdictions. So again, we have to make sure that we have the right address, but even if we have the right address, and let's say the address never changed, the state, the county, the city, the village, that's probably not going to change, but the rate could change. And then with these districts, these special tax jurisdictions, today that might exist as a tax authority for your account, but tomorrow it might not. So the point I'm making is if you have hundreds of customers, maybe thousands of customers, and each of those customers have 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 different tax jurisdictions, and each of those jurisdictions can change at any time, not to mention the taxability of the product, you can see the level of complexity that happens really, really fast. And you know, again, in the past, maybe you've been blissfully ignorant of this, but that doesn't mean that you're safe. And what we want to do is make sure that you're compliant, and we want to make you compliant without having to think about this. Because, you know, just thinking about it right now, from what I'm saying, hopefully it's not hopefully, but it's maybe giving you a headache, and we can make that headache go away. So bottom line, zip codes are an inaccurate way to do it. So let's talk about it now, right? So think about this, folks. This is like any kind of technology, right? You're not just ignoring this today. You've devised ways to do this. And we go meet with people, and we see spreadsheets, and we see Post-it notes, and we see notes stuck in the customer account record, and there's lots of different things. And you've got somebody who goes to the Board of Equalization or the Board of Revenue website, and they're researching this. But, you know, let's pretend you had a new customer, and let's start to think about all the things you do, right? You got to enter the address. You have to say, is that a valid address? Do we have nexus in that state? Okay, we do. Is the customer tax exempt or not? Okay, they're taxable. All right, well, who gets to tax them? And then you have to build that tax schedule. So there's a lot of work that has to be done. And again, you should be doing this every time you ship to them because it can change. And right now that may seem normal, but it's really nutty when you think about it, because there's a way to do it without ever having to do that, and then you just process the order and Avalara automatically gives you the tax in real time. So the analogy we like to use sometimes is, think about a GPS in your car. I don't know about you all, but I'm 40-something, and I always managed to find my way wherever I went without a GPS, right, my whole life. I used to just call for directions. Then there was those trip tickets from AAA. Then it got a little fancier. You could map quest it online, and you'd have printed directions in your car. And now you just get in your car and you plug in the address, and you don't even think about it. Now, I travel all over the country, and I can't even imagine anymore now without using a GPS. So the point being, just because you have a manual way to solve sales tax now doesn't mean it's the best way. And our job at Avalara is to show you the fastest way, the easiest way, the cheapest way, and most importantly, the safest way to do it. So we want to take all these steps and all this due diligence out of your hands. And most importantly, you know, some of you on the phone may be accounting people, and you may have a little bit of a grasp about this, but typically in companies, the folks that are responsible for setting up new customers and doing credit apps and setting up the tax schedules usually have no accounting background at all. And they typically, even if they do have an accounting background, they're not tax experts. So that's a really scary thing for your company's line of defense against a negative audit, to be somebody who has no tax background. We want to take tax decisions out of the hands of customer service and credit and, God forbid, salespeople. That's supposed to be a joke too. So here's the other thing. You say, yeah, Sal, a lot of my customers are exempt. And I know in the Sage world, we deal with quite a few people who a big chunk of their business is exempt customers. And a lot of folks historically have been kind of blasé and saying, well, you know, most of our sales are exempt. I don't even think we'd get audited. If we do get audited and we can't produce a certificate, we'll just pay it. You know, they kind of have a little bit of a cavalier attitude. Well, the problem is, as we talked about before, your exposure to an audit is really, really high. States are aggressively targeting people with a high degree of exempt sales because it's a very, very easy place for them to catch you doing something wrong. Okay? Now, not only that, but if you can't find the certificates and you have to call the customer back and ask for it, or we've heard a lot of cases where you charge the tax and then they tell you that they're exempt. So you have a lot of situations where either you're delaying the order trying to get the information, which isn't good, or you just charge them tax anyway and you have to credit them, or maybe you just don't charge them tax but you never get the documentation and then you get a negative audit. All of those are bad scenarios where you're not taking care of your customer in the best possible way, and you're not keeping your company's risk down. So those are things we want to avoid. So where it really boils down to, though, is you got to file these returns, right? And you have to do it correctly, and you have to do it on time, and each state may have a slightly different form and format, and some of them might be e-file, and some of them might be paper, and of course they all you know, you have to remit to all these folks, right? So what we see a lot is people are creating reports. So they're trying to mine their own data and you know, Crystal reports and Excel and Access and all this stuff, and they're trying to summarize their data, and then they're trying to rationalize it and make sure things are correct, so maybe they're fixing it as best they can, and then somebody's got to type the information into the proper form, which even if you had the right data, you might make a mistake. Then you've got to create checks, and on and on and on. So all those things are a huge time waster and a huge source of risk. We talk to many folks who are spending 2 or 3 days a month on this, some more than that, and if you start to add up the hours and then you start to figure out what you get paid and maybe what your staff gets paid, you can see that your company's already spending thousands on this. In fact, I think there's a slide where the average small company is spending about $22,000 a year, and I think medium companies, you can double that. And that's just in a normal year. If they get audited, the cost goes up another about 50% because you have to spend time and money responding to the audit. So don't forget that any time you spend on it now is a cost for your company. And what we want to do is take that cost away and let yourselves focus on things that are more strategic and more valuable to the company. So again, big thing about sales tax, just to recap, it's a statutory requirement. You're going to get audited eventually. If they audit you and you're doing it manually, you're probably going to get some penalties. Again, doing it manually is labor intensive and expensive, and people are human. They're going to make mistakes, and we want to try to avoid that. But the biggest thing then is that it's non-revenue generating. So again, it's something that you're doing, but it's not making the company more profitable or more successful. And bottom line, that last bullet I can't emphasize enough. Even if you didn't mind spending the time and money, you have to be accurate. If you're not accurate, the expense to the company can be dramatic. And again, it's not something you can plan for. They just hit you with that bill and you have to pay. So you do have some choices, right? So I've heard people sometimes saying they have a CPA firm or somebody research things. That's one option, but I can tell you that I've given talks to a lot of CPA firms and specifically to their state and local tax group, and you're paying somebody to learn something that they don't already know. They do not know this. It's not an area of expertise, but they're glad to take a few $100s of your money to research it for you if you want. So while that would be safe, it's probably not the quickest or the least expensive way to do it. We have a lot of people who just say, well, we just charge the state tax, or we use the county or a zip code or some sort of thing. It's just something quick and easy, and they kind of just put their head in the sand and hope it goes away. That's not realistic, and it's dangerous. So with Avalara, what we're saying is automate that solution. So we take all those functions from creating a real-time sales tax calculation at the click of a button, to outsourcing and automating your returns process, to automating the exemption certificate collection and management process. All those things give you an end-to-end solution to automate the process and take the risk out. And it's not super high cost like you might think. It's actually based on your usage levels, which we'll get to later. So what you get with Avalara is we can cover sales tax, consumer's use tax, we can do the compliance, we can do the exemption certificates, and we even have tax services. So I want to talk just a second about that. What tax services means, if you say, you know what, Sal, we file in 3 states, but we sell in 12, and I'm pretty sure in a few of those we should probably be filing. We can do things like do a nexus study for you. Or if you know you have nexus, but you're not sure what your liability is and you're afraid to approach the state, we can do a voluntary disclosure agreement with the state and negotiate on your behalf. So we give you a level of expertise, and we can give you a level of anonymity to get you to a compliant state in the least painful way possible. So keep that in mind. There's things that we can do for you as well, in addition to or before or even after automation. So we always joke that Avalara and our solution, we use the names Sage Sales Tax and AvaTax kind of interchangeably. It is the same product, but we do have a real strong relationship with Sage, and so it is on the Sage price list as Sage Sales Tax 4, and then fill in the name of your Sage ERP. So the great thing about this is when you automate it, once that knowledge is there, it's there, and it's constantly updated, right? So typically, and some of you on the phone might be this person at your company, there's a person at the company that understands this better than anybody else at your company. And everybody says, oh, sales tax, I don't know, go to Susan. She'll know what to do, you know. But the problem is, you know, Susan has other things to do. Susan could quit. Susan could get promoted. And by automating it, you take that knowledge and you put it into the system. So we have a way to automate those little oddities about your business and peculiarities, and then the system always works. So there's no need to train anybody, and you're not beholden to one person having the expertise. You're kind of institutionalizing that. And again, you can now focus on running your business instead of trying to become a tax expert, which I'm sure no one really wants to do. So the way we do this is we have an integration into Sage. So essentially, if you think about it, from your Sage, and I'm going to show you this in a minute, but from your Sage accounting software, when you're on the order entry screen, when you would go to total an order, it does a web services call to our sales tax engine, and we automatically provide the real-time sales tax calculation. We can also do that from your e-commerce. We can do it from CRM, like Sales Logics. We can do it from POS. So wherever in your order process sales tax is relevant, we can make a call to Avalara, and Avalara can compute the tax. And again, we do that because we have knowledge in our system, over 11,000 tax jurisdictions, 100,000 taxability rules, and again, avoiding that audit. We have over 11,000 customers right now. We've never had someone fail an audit that was using our service. So that's really, really cool. And I think, you know, the old cliche that the proof is in the pudding, that's a pretty strong proof source there. So we're kind of proud of that. So I want to talk a little bit about how we do it. So you might be familiar with some of the options out there, right? So there's some companies that are really big on the content, and they'll try to say that, you know, they're content experts, but they don't really play nicely with your existing software, and can be a lot of difficulty in getting them up and running, and it could inhibit you from future moves. And then there's some other companies that have pretty good product, pretty good technology, but it's really, really expensive, and they're geared more towards an enterprise solution. So what Avalara did from the get-go, when Roy Rawlings, our founder, started building the solution, I think it might have been for Boeing, it was for some big company out on the West Coast, we realized that, hey, this is something that a lot of companies could use, and we made the decision that no one's going to buy a sales tax service or solution as your priority. Your priority is to have the accounting system that runs your business, or to have your e-commerce platform, or your point-of-sale software. So we built Avalara and AvaTax to be subservient to that. So what we mean by that is it integrates very tightly and very simply to your accounting system or your e-commerce. So from the person's point of view who's setting it up, all you do is set the tax record to AvaTax on the customer account record, and then when the person processes an order, all they do is process the order. So if I'm in customer service, for example, I'd add the items, I'd hit total, it automatically calls out to Avalara, it provides the exact right sales tax amount, and that's what goes on the invoice. So there's nothing to think about. What else is really cool is if you're on, say, Sage 100 today, and you decided in the future to change to 500 or something, or even a competitive product, Avalara works with all the major mid-market ERP products. We work with most of the e-commerce solutions you're probably familiar with, and we have a software development kit that allows us to integrate to any custom programming that you might have. And those are important for two reasons. One is your IT people can rest assured that whatever your situation is now as far as networking, hardware, software, Avalara can come in and sort of play nice with others without interrupting any of your current systems. And then in the future, if you decide to change, add, delete any of those key business systems, Avalara can easily be made to work with them without any disruption to your business. So real key point there from an IT standpoint. So I want to break down a little bit of the main components. So the first part is the Sage sales tax. And again, I think I talked about this, but just to recap, there's several things that we do in an instant when you go to total an order. We're going to validate the address. We are going to assign the appropriate jurisdictions. We're going to consider the taxability of the product for each of those jurisdictions and for each product. And do sourcing rules need to apply? And we're going to kick back the tax. Now, I couldn't even say that in less than 30 seconds, but Avalara does it in about 2 seconds. And then any invoice that we apply tax to, you'll have full access to line item reporting. So you could pull any single invoice and get line item detail as far as what was taxed and how much. So that's the core solution for the state sales tax. Then we have the, we call it AvaTax certs. So in short, the way the certs works, let's pretend you had a new customer and they wanted to be treated as exempt. You would send them an email requesting a certificate. They would click on a link. That link would take them to, we call it a collection wizard, which is just ask them some questions about their business and why they're exempt. And then what we're going to do is make sure we have the right certificate, they sign it electronically, and they send it back. Now you're guaranteed that you have their name on it, your name on it, it's the right certificate, and it's current. And then that ends up being integrated into the tax decision software so that Avalara and Sage know that this is an exempt account. So we're automatically going to know if it's an exempt account, we're not going to charge sales tax. And then we're even going to program in the renewal management. So if I know that they expire next December, automatically they'll be sent an email saying, hey, you're about to expire, we need a new certificate. So we're going to keep them honest without you having to remember all that. So it's really, really cool. And again, keep in mind when the auditors come in, they're going to give you a list of invoices and say, you didn't charge tax here, show me your documentation. And the documentation needs to have been current, it needs to be signed, it needs to be the right document, it has to have their name on it, your name on it. So there's a lot of little things that trip people up. So then there's the returns, and I think I kind of talked about this. For the returns, every month for everywhere you have to file, we're going to do a liability worksheet. All you do is go into the dashboard, you look at the amounts, say, yeah, that looks good to me. You press approve. Avalara prepares a return. We'll file it, whether that's e-file or paper file. We even remit and pay the funds, and then at the end of the month, we would just do a wire transfer from you to us for the total amount for all the jurisdictions. And then you have a full archive of the returns that you have access to at any time. And if there's any after the fact notices or anything that we have to respond to, Avalara would do that. So this page represents an end-to-end solution where you're basically automating and outsourcing your sales tax. I know a lot of you have probably already done that with payroll tax, and the scary thing is sales tax is more difficult and probably more likely to be audited, which again is why hundreds of customers every month are going live on Avalara because people are starting to realize that this is something they just don't want to do. Okay, so again, let's recap. So why would automation be good? Saves you time, increases the accuracy, again, mitigate risk, which is really, really huge, much more efficient, and you're much more profitable. So again, all really, really good arguments. And I know sometimes we talk to accounting folks who then have to make a case to someone in senior management to sign off on automating with Avalara. These are all really good bullet points to share if you find yourself in that position. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to give a quick overview, and I'm just going to use slides today. And these are basically 9200 or I'm sorry, Sage 100. But what I want you to understand is that the concepts are exactly the same for any Sage product. In fact, if you were using a Microsoft product, it's the same. So we integrate to two different places. We integrate to the customer record, customer maintenance screen, and then also the sales order. And so all the concepts will be the same. So if you're on Mass 500 or 300 or something like that, I think you'll be able to make the leap with me. But if not, we'd be happy to arrange a demonstration of that specific software and how the interaction works there. So we've got the customer maintenance card, and we talked before about all those steps you have to go through to create the tax schedule. Well, you notice here on the screen, the tax schedule is AvaTax. So that's the beautiful thing. We have a way, and we'll show you this during the training and the go live, but we have a way to just automatically set the tax schedule to your accounts to AvaTax. Once that's done during the setup, you're done. And if anything changes about this account or the tax rates or the jurisdictions that have the authority, you don't even ever have to think about that. By virtue of it being AvaTax, we will always have the right tax for that exact moment in time. So it's really, really cool. One of the other things we do is I talked about address validation. The slide on the left, the address is in the wrong order, and we're missing a zip code. In fact, even if this was spelled like Gulf, like Gulf of Mexico, G-U-L-F, Avalara's system has the intelligence to correct that. So either when you total an order or just by pressing this A button, we're going to do an address validation. What it does is it hits, it's called a CAS certified database. It's the same technology that the United States Postal Service uses, and we're going to make sure that your address is valid. And then we also format it in the appropriate manner. So what's neat about this is not only does it assure we have the right jurisdictions, but it also assures that you ship to the right place, which allows you to avoid fines for a bad address from your carrier. The other thing that's neat about this is we deal with some folks, especially in oil and gas, where there might not be an address yet. And if there isn't, you have the ability to put a latitude line coordinate and a longitude coordinate, and we can calculate the tax. So that is really, really cool technology. And again, that's what I meant in that earlier slide about, you know, it's not just about the rates and it's not just about tables. It's about technology, and it's about giving you the information in real time in the easiest way possible. And you'll see in the next couple of slides what I mean by that, because the user doesn't have to think about this. So we're on the sales order screen, and again, I think regardless of which specific Sage ERP you use, it's fairly similar. I'm on the order screen, I start selecting items, I start selecting quantities, and then I hit the total button. When I hit that total button, because the schedule is set to AvaTax, it's going to make a web services call out to our tax engine. We're going to consider all those variables, and we just give you back the tax. And it's as easy as pie. So I clicked the button, and what happened was it gave us the proper tax amount. I have the option to click on tax detail, and I can see that we charge state, city, county, and a special tax jurisdiction for this account based on the address. And by the way, we're always going to use the address that you're using at that moment in time. So if you have somebody where you don't always ship to the exact same place, or there's more than one location, we have the intelligence to deal with that, and we'll just handle it based on the exact location of this particular invoice. So you might say, that's all really neat, Sal, but how does Avalara know we have some kind of weird things about our business and a couple little rules and things that are unique to us? Well, we have the concept of this admin console or a dashboard. I may use both terms. It's the same thing. This is where you kind of teach AvaTax about your business, for lack of a better word. And what we're doing is we're inputting some of the key points, and the idea is that you do this once and you never have to do it again. And then your average day-to-day folks who enter orders don't even have to think about it. But it is dynamic. So if your business changed, if you add new items, if you go into new states, you can update this. And Avalara provides some training, and we provide a go-live team that will walk you through this whole thing. So we're going to teach you how to set this up. And it's something that if you use our whole service end-to-end, we've had folks up as quickly as a couple of days. For most people, it's between 16 and 40 hours, and how fast you get it done is really up to you. Most folks, we tell them to allow a month, just because you probably can't do this 100% of the time, and so you want to budget a couple hours here, a couple hours there in the midst of your regular duties to get Avalara up and running. And what happens is you would go in here, and you'll notice a couple things. One is that we have this concept of Avalara University, and that's just where you would get training. You have the ability to submit a question to us by email, by instant messenger, or to call us. But Avalara is the one who's going to help you install it, and Avalara is the one that's going to provide ongoing support. So while we run the order through your Sage partner, Avalara is the one that's going to help you get it up and running, and Avalara is the one that's going to troubleshoot as you're off and running if you need it. So I talked before about being able to have line item detail. This is an example of a transaction that was run through, and I was able to click on a particular line item, which is kind of blown up here in the lower right. And what it tells me is for this line item, these are the jurisdictions that were whose taxes were invoked. These are the rates, and this is the amount of tax. So you can get extremely granular, and it's really, really easy to find the information. So you'll find that in the past you may have had to configure reports and do your own data mining and things like that. With this system, everything should be there at the click of a button. You just have to decide, which states, which time period, and which format, and you can pretty much have anything you want. I kind of started talking about this slide a little bit, but I want to review it real quickly. So again, for Go Live, after someone purchases, you kind of stop dealing with me or Carrie or whoever your Avalara salesperson might be, and we hand you off to our Go Live team. These folks are experts in compliance, and they're experts in our solutions, and they know the Sage software really well. So they're going to make it as easy and fast as possible for you to get up and running. Then after you're up and running, you'll be assigned to Avalara support. And again, we have a variety of ways: email, text, 800 number, the usual, where you can get to us for help. And then sometimes you might be up and running and the software's working great, but something changes about your business, and you say, hey, we just hired a guy in Illinois and he's going to go into Wisconsin regularly as well. What do we do? You know, and we can provide assistance for you on compliance. And depending on the nature of it, some little things we actually can help just, you know, as a service. And then if it's more involved, where we have to do a study and do some things with another state or something, you know, then those are going to be fee-based, and we can share that with you when it's appropriate. And then the final thing is the customer loyalty team. So once you're an actual user and customer of, say, Sales Tax and Avalara, you would have a customer account manager assigned to work with you. And part of the reason we push you along through this group of folks is at every step of the relationship, we want you to have the best, most qualified person to provide you with the assistance and support that you need. So during Go Live, it's the Go Live experts. After you're up, it's tech support, and then finally customer loyalty. And the reason we give you the customer loyalty is my job is such that I travel a lot. I'm doing presentations like these, and that can be very difficult to get a hold of. Whereas the customer loyalty folks are out at our headquarters in Bainbridge Island in Washington, and they're always there, and they're always available. And then they have rollover if you need to call Bob and Bob's not there, then your call can be answered by Joe. And so you're always going to have someone to respond to you very quickly. So hopefully that makes sense in our model and why we do that. We found it to be really, really effective. And I think the proof source for this is that we have over 95% of the folks who sign up with Avalara re-sign up. So you sign up for a 12-year, excuse me, you sign up for a 12-month contract, and at the end of 12 months, if you're not happy, you know, you can always walk away. But over 95% of our users re-sign up. In fact, a lot of folks add additional services as they move forward. And we think that's a really, really strong proof source, because folks certainly wouldn't do that if they weren't realizing a lot of benefit. So again, you know, why do people buy AvaTax? It's similar to payroll, like I said before. You're not adding value, and you're spending time and money to do this, and it's really hard to do it right. And again, there's that specter of the fines and everything. So we want to automate that and give you an end-to-end compliance solution so that you don't have to worry about it anymore. So our goal is to be, you know, really simple and easy to work with. And if you go out on our website, you can see we've got folks who liked our product so much. Not only do we have folks that you can call and talk to as a reference, but we made stars out of a lot of them. We filmed them, and we did videos of them talking about their reasons for using Avalara and their experiences with it. And we have folks that talk about that in general, some folks that talk about our certificates in particular, some that talk about our returns in particular, but we really, really like that. And a couple things are, not only does the product work really well and seamlessly with your existing software, but we're really good at getting people up and running. We've heard horror stories from competitors where people bought the product and 6 months later it still didn't work. Our folks, we have up, you know, like I said, we can get you up in a couple of days. We can go as fast as you can go. We take over 100 new clients live every month. We have a strong sense of urgency in making sure that when we're doing your returns and things like that, that everything's done on time and it's done perfectly. And then again, we provide constant access to a variety of different resources, both online and human resources as well. And again, those are all available either on our website. A lot of times the partners have this on their website as well. But if you look at avalara.com, you can find all of these videos, because we also have video demonstrations and things like that. Oh, hang on a minute, I didn't mean to do that. Okay, so again, a little bit about Avalara. I always like to, I know a lot of people start their presentations talking about their company. My thought is that it doesn't really matter unless you feel like we have something of value to offer. Hopefully I've shown that to you already. And I did want you to know that we are not new. We have over 10,000 businesses using our products. We're doing billions of dollars of sales calculations annually, filing hundreds of thousands of returns, and we are very involved with the Streamlined Sales Tax Project, which is a consortium of about 20-some states that are working very hard to make sure that sales tax can be a little bit simplified and streamlined to make it easier for folks to be compliant. And so we're really on the cusp of all the things that are going on in the world of sales tax, not only the way it is now, but the way it's going to be in the future. So again, if you're wondering, you know, am I somebody that needs this or not, if you do business in multiple states and you have nexus in multiple states, for sure we can help you. If you're dealing business in a complicated state like the ones listed here, or if you're in a complicated industry, those are all people we can really help. And again, what we don't want to have happen is for you to wait until you have a negative audit and you pay a fine and then come talk to us. We offer folks a free sales tax compliance discussion, and we consider it a checkup. So for example, I go to the doctor every year even if I don't feel bad because, you know, you want to get a checkup and make sure. So it's similar with sales tax. So maybe you haven't had a negative audit and maybe you feel pretty good about the way you're doing it, and hopefully you're doing it great. But we can talk, and in about 15 minutes we can determine if there's some issues that you need to be considering or if there's some changes you need to make. If based on that phone call it sounds like a problem that you want to dig into and consider solving, then we can schedule a time to do a demonstration and kind of talk about some of the specifics of what a solution might entail for you and the related costs and such. But I really encourage folks to at least once a year sit down with someone like Avalara and just have a discussion about how you're handling compliance today, and then we can talk to you about some of the best practices and things that you should be considering. Again, I haven't even updated this, but you can see all the awards we've been getting over the last couple of years. We're not making this stuff up. We're really proud of all the success we've had and all the recognition we've gotten from Sage and from Microsoft and from various business publications across the country. And in fact, if you want, I think it was last week, it might have been Monday, but just recently, no, it was last week, Avalara was featured prominently in an article in USA Today about how companies are automating tasks such as sales tax. And it has a couple of pictures and quotes of our CEO and founder, Scott McFarlane. Again, all kind of product demonstrations available at this web link. We'd be happy to schedule a live demonstration for you as well. And one last thing, this is a little bit different, but we're starting to define our business as where can we help people eliminate manual tasks that are typically around accounting and finance that could be made faster, easier, more accurate with automation. Another one of those areas was with 1099s. And it's really significant this time of year because this is when everybody's got to start thinking about that. And we have a solution where you can upload the 1099 detail from your accounting software, and then you go through a validation process with us online. You fix your data, you submit your data, and so we handle everything with the IRS, and you don't even have to print and mail anything. It's totally automating and outsourcing the whole thing. So again, we have videos of that, or we would be happy to set up a one-on-one discussion. I'd say anybody who's doing at least 50 1099s annually could really benefit from this. And that's the whole thing. So hopefully everybody found that beneficial.